everybody, welcome back to What Would Charlie Shoot? Thank you for joining me today. We are on episode number 6. Today, I want to go ahead and tell you a lot of different things. But first, I want to go ahead and talk about a story. I want to talk about a story about a tattooed man with a camera in New York City. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you an elongated version of that today, but I want to tell you about a couple other things, answer your questions, and go from there. So first, let's begin with the story today. He wandered the streets on a mission. There was once a heavily tattooed man dressed all in black with a large Stetson hat that roamed the streets in New York City with his camera. Every day that you saw him, he shuffled to and fro, snapping whatever caught his eye along the way with his camera. Click! The camera whirred as he passed an old man in a stoop with a bow tie and a button-up shirt reading the newspaper. The man casually looked up at the tattooed man with the camera, but hastily scoffed and went back to reading. Click! The camera whirred as the tattooed man passed a young woman eating a giant cinnamon roll in a cafe. Proof that young women eat something and do not starve themselves to death, he thought aloud as he browsed by. As the man shuffled past many others, they seemed to move out of his way as he was parting the sea with his presence. Children looked in awe as the man passed and slightly grinned to let them know that he was not evil. Once the man turned onto 42nd Street and headed for the train from Hell's Kitchen, he spotted a pigeon about to take off in flight with a giant pretzel. Click! The camera whirred again as the pigeon flew off with his prize. Upon entering the subway station at 42nd and Broadway, the man spotted a musician playing the banjo. A musician strummed and picked his way through an uplifting sound that echoed through the tunnel as the tattooed man with the camera passed. The man whirred around 360 degrees flawlessly and click! Whirred the camera, getting a reverse image of the musician. To those that passed, it seemed the man was spinning in circles and never took a shot. As he entered the train, he looked down at the floor and noticed a red ticket stub. He wondered who it belonged to and if they had dropped it on their way to a show. It was in the style of a ticket that allowed you to enter an amusement park. Perhaps it was from Coney Island. Yet on closer observations, it had no markings that resembled its origin. Click! The man made an image of the ticket stub on the train floor and hastily sat down before the train crowded with no empty seats. An old woman looked up from her knitting across the train and smiled warmly at the man. He was always misjudged by many with his appearance, dressed all in black and heavily tattooed, but somehow she saw right through him. He tipped his hat to the woman in gratitude and exited the train on the next stop on 18th Street. As the tattooed man exited the train, he spotted a large heap of trash on the subway platform. Specifically, a newspaper with a large print that read, "The end is coming," caught his eye. Click! Whirred the camera as he passed the pile. Upon climbing the stairs to exit the train station and head east towards the camera store, he felt sharp pains of hunger rumble in his stomach. The savory smell of pizza wafted through the air from a nearby shop. He shifted the camera to his side and made a direct beeline for the shop to grab a couple slices. He hurriedly headed for the camera shop for a meeting, and he opted for cold pizza and quickly scarfed the slices down his throat. As he returned to the street, he continued to the camera shop. He was to meet with the director of the shop's education team to plan an upcoming event he was hosting. When he entered the store and announced his arrival, one of the managers said that the director was sick that day and forgot to reschedule the meeting. That figures, he thought out loud again. He quickly left word to reschedule the appointment for another day. He perused shiny new cameras as he headed for the exit. Later that evening, his cell phone rang as he sat on the desk with a glass of whiskey. Who is it now, he thought. He hated to speak on the phone and preferred the likes of email or text over long, brain-draining conversations during which he could not do other things. His editor from the fashion editorial early in the week shared with him that they needed to move up the shoot date to meet the scheduling needs of another project. That figures too, he thought. No one ever plans anything properly and sticks to it. The man hung up the phone as he took a long swill of whiskey and propped his leather boots upon his desk. The glow from the computer screen washed across his face in the dimly lit room. Outside, he could hear tourists going on about taking selfies at the bar down the street. He looked out a sliver of his blinds out the window and scoffed as he watched 3 fancily dressed people pose for the most god-awful thing known to man with self-fornication with their phones. Anything for the gram, he thought to himself as he watched them falsely wander down the street. The next day the man awoke to birds chirping in his bedroom window. The sun set his eyes and forced him awake as he longed for coffee. He quickly got up, used the restroom, and started the coffee machine and opened his phone to check notifications for the day. All dribble, he thought as he scratched his stomach in long strokes and wandered into his office. He finished his coffee, quickly showered, and dressed to head for the local bagel cafe. Upon entering, a young woman greeted him and promptly completed his order. As he sat down in the window enjoying his breakfast, a pigeon landed in the window and carelessly stared at his bagels. It did not seem to want to move and fly off and was completely fixated on how it could steal his breakfast. He laughed to himself and tore off a small piece of bagel. As he finished his breakfast and exited the cafe, he casually tossed a tiny bit of bagel into the air in the pigeon's direction. It swooped from the window, caught the bit of bagel in its beak, and flew off in gratitude. Another creature just trying to survive here too, he thought as he watched. The man knew how hard it was to survive in New York City. One day to the next, every creature does what it has to do to survive. So that's my story about the tattooed man dressed all in black in New York City. What do you think about that? Feel free to go ahead and leave me comments. Go ahead and contact me via email, anything like that. Let me know if you want to hear more stories on the show. Today also I want to just bring up, I'm going to be doing a special thing for my Udemy class. I'm going to be giving it to you for $10. Where else on the planet can you get a photography class for $10? If you want to learn photography, feel free to hit me up on Udemy, search my name, Charlie Naebeck, and you'll be able to get this special before Thanksgiving, before Black Friday, all that good stuff for just $10. And also this week, I'm going to bring up a couple other little projects. Recently, I talked about in the last podcast how I switched up to Charlie Naebeck Co. I'm going to invite all of you to go ahead and join my new projects. If you go over to medium.com/@CharlieNaebeck, you'll be able to see all the information about my latest projects, and you'll be able to join my other podcast, Share Dreams Co. as well, and you'll be able to go ahead and jump on board. This week, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you very much for joining me as well. We did not have a whole lot of questions this week. The biggest one that came up is the why of photography. And so I just want to address that really quickly. Why do you make photographs? Well, I've explored that topic for many years myself, and it comes down to shooting for family for me, for remembering, and for actually documenting what I love in life. For everybody, there's a different reason why, and what I would encourage you to do to actually discover that is to go ahead and sit down with a pen and paper, to do some free writing, and to go ahead and actually find out your why as to why you make photographs. Also, if you want a great book to read, go read Susan Sontag on photography. It's a classic from the history of photography, and it explains why a lot of people may do what they do in photography as well. And so that's one the why of why you shoot photography and all that good stuff. This week I'm going to leave the mistakes in this podcast as well because I believe in authenticity. I'm going to continue to embrace the neighborhood I'm in at the moment, and we're going to go from there. Thanks again for giving me a listen this week on episode number 6. Join me next week as I talk about the story about how I met Robert Frank, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much and have a great day. Thanks for listening to What Would Charlie Shoot?